To them young boys in the hood with big dreams of being superstars. Don't let nobody tell you that you can't, but you gotta work super hard. To the older man who feels his life is over cause he wasted it standing on corners. One thing I learned about the streets, it's never too late for a come up. I was told before that I couldn't do it. I remember being told by my own peeps not to rap, and singing in my hood wasn't popular, but I got respect for it cause I was a beast. Facts. If you got a dream, you gotta stay committed, you can get it, but you gotta be a beast, you can't slack for a minute. Remember this, if you remember nothing else, you gotta be relentless.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, misery bots of all ages, back again with another video. This time I'm talking about $450 OLED Steam Deck. But before I do, if you like that intro music, definitely check out the Adrian Rockstar SoundCloud in the descriptions below. Let's get it. So, this question is more of a theory. And I want to ask the question. Should Valve come out with a $450 256 gigabyte Steam Deck OLED? Yes, I'm posing the question. I am posing the question. I don't think I've heard anybody else talk about this, but as of right now, Valve has a $399 250 gig LCD for, $399 or whatever. I'm thinking, should Valve just go ahead and either reduce the price of the 256 gigabyte just to be a little bit more competitive, especially with Nintendo Switch literally right around the corner. Like as of right now, we are about a week away from the Nintendo Switch 2 launching. We are in May 30th, so it's about 1 week away before Nintendo Switch 2 launches. Nintendo Switch 2 is going to eat into the Steam Deck's uh, um, pool of consumers. Like, that is undoubtable, and it's right as of right now, it's one of, if not the biggest console launch of all time. So regardless what you say or think, the Switch 2 is going to be massively popular, especially at launch. One way Valve can be competitive is, one, to drop the price of the LCD model, maybe drop that to about maybe 350, something a lot more competitive. That'd be $100 cheaper than the base model Switch 2, than just the Switch 2, which $100 cheaper for a product that is undoubtedly going to be relatively, especially when you compare it to like performance, um, inferior to the Switch 2. But when it comes to that OLED, there's going to be some advantages that the OLED model does have. But as of right now, the OLED model for the Steam Deck is $550 as of right now, with a $650 terabyte version. Now, I'm not asking Valve to reduce the price on those. What I'm asking Valve right now is, can they come out with a 256 gigabyte model of the Steam Deck OLED at $450, the same price as the Nintendo Switch 2? This will make for an interesting competition, because there are some things that the Switch 2 are going to be better at than the Steam Deck OLED. But there are things that the Steam Deck OLED are doing that's better, undoubtedly better than the Nintendo Switch. But at $550, it's kind of hard to justify that over the Nintendo Switch, which is a newer product, as well as a product that is undoubtedly going to be stronger. Now, how much stronger? I don't think it's going to be much stronger than the Steam Deck, but it will be stronger than the Steam Deck. I mean, if you look at it right now, I would go as far to say that the Steam Deck OLED at $450 for 256 gigabyte is going to be extremely competitive, especially when you consider the fact that you can actually upgrade the storage via micro SD cards, just like the Nintendo Switch. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is also launching with a 256 gigabyte memory card, if I'm not mistaken. So just think about it. You have this. You can either go to a store. You can either choose, or not even go to the store. You can be put in a position where you can either choose the Nintendo Switch 2, 265 gigabyte, albeit 1080p screen, HDR, or you can choose a 450 gigabyte Steam Deck OLED with HDR, 7.4 inch screen. I think the Switch has a 7. Switch 2 has a 7.9 inch screen, so slightly bigger screen on the Switch side, but and also a slightly higher refresh rate, which the Switch will have a 120 hertz, whereas the Steam Deck has a 90 hertz refresh rate. I don't know if Nintendo Switch 2 is packing a Wi-Fi 6E connector, but the Steam Deck is. And in terms of the battery life, I expect the battery life to be relative between both platforms. But you have to understand like that Steam Deck is going to be packing that OLED HDR OLED screen, albeit at 180p. So there are going to be trade-offs. Then you have the other trade-off in which the Nintendo is obviously going to have their exclusive games on there, like your Donkey Kongs, your Smash Brothers, your Mario Kart, so on and so forth. But then again, Steam Deck OLED at a $450 at 265 gigabytes, it's also going to be providing you with stuff, any game that's in the Steam store for the most part, the majority of games that are in the Steam store, which that library is going to be absolutely massive. It would make for a very aggressive play on Valve's part and just make the Steam Deck just that much more desirable. For it to be $100 cheaper, because I have to admit, like $550, I just pulled the trigger on one on a Steam Deck OLED for $550. That price is a little high. It is a little high. And I can understand Valve not wanting to drop the price on like maybe the 512 gigabyte OLED version, but if they were to create a model with a Steam Deck that has less memories, they can actually justify dropping the price on that. If they were to drop a model that had less memory, you can easily, like Valve can easily justify dropping the price on that and putting that at $450. And even if they wanted to keep the LCD model at $499, fine. But give us an OLED model at $450, even if you're dropping the memory. We'll make that up with the memory card. You know what I mean? Like that, I do. This seems like a win-win for everybody. It's a win-win for Valve because they're not necessarily changing anything on the Steam Deck outside of putting the 256 gigabyte SD card that they use for the LCD models. Just put that in the OLED model and then sell it for $450. I promise. Like that's going to sell. That's going to sell. Like as it stands right now, they already have the refurbished joint, right? They already have the refurbished joint at $439. I'm telling you to sell a brand new one, albeit with less memory, for $10 more. For $10 more. Like this OLED one right here can't stay in stock. I never see this in stock. First of all, probably because not too many people are returning their OLEDs or having issues with their OLED models. But two, if it is coming in stock, it's selling out so fast, so fast. They can't hold on to this. You know what I mean? They can't hold on to this model because it's such a good deal. Such a good deal. So yes, Valve, if you can hear this, anybody who are rooting for the Steam Deck or just like the Steam Deck or prefer the Steam Deck and want more people to get Steam Decks, because obviously it's only at about 4 or 5 million units sold at the moment. We want more units of those sold so that it will justify Valve, making a second Steam Deck, a Steam Deck 2. Obviously, the more successful Steam Deck 1 is, the more likely Valve will come out with a Steam Deck 2, and that's what I want. I would love to get a Steam Deck 2 one day, even if it's like maybe 4 or 5 years from now. Like I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to wait because the Steam Deck 1 is really good and it's fulfilling a lot of my needs. So I am willing to wait another, 4 or 5 years. That'd make a total of what, like 8 years or so, if that was the case. 4 or 5 years would make a total about 7, 8 years, which is your average console generation nowadays. So yeah, I am completely okay with that. Come out, drop that $450, 256 gigabyte Steam Deck Valve, get competitive with Nintendo Switch 2, and just even if you're not thinking into the competitive thing with the Nintendo Switch 2, it's just a great consumer move. You know what I mean? It's just a great consumer move because as of right now, it's the 512 gigabyte is for 550 is pretty expensive. It is pretty expensive. It is pretty expensive. It's worth it, but well, I don't know if it's worth it yet. I'll tell you when I get my OLED. I believe it's worth it. That's why I pulled the trigger. But it'll be so much easier if you can come out with a model that's $100 cheaper. Even if it's a situation where like the consumer would have to go ahead and buy a micro SD card, right? Like it'll just make it's just a good consumer move. Let me know what y'all think in the descriptions below. Anybody who's a fan of Steam Deck or just Steam period, let me know what you think in the comments below. If this can reach out to people like Deck Ready and stuff like that, I would love for them to like make a video on what they think of possible 256 gigabyte $450 Steam Deck OLED. If they think that would be massively successful, if that's a good move for Valve. I'm curious to know where the people in this community thinks of that proposal, and if that's something Valve will actually do. I don't see like why not. They're already putting the 256 gigabyte in the LCD model. They must have tons of those on hand right now. All I'm asking is to simply put it into an OLED model and then create another SKU for it. And that's it. Like it will literally not cost Valve no extra money to do so. So like, share, subscribe. Please share this with other people in the community, as well as like anybody who can make an influence and reach out to Valve to see if this would be a plausible option. Like, share, subscribe, and remember your life is a fantasy.
To them young boys in the hood with big dreams of being superstars. Don't let nobody tell you that you can't, but you gotta work super hard. To the older man who feels his life is over cause he wasted it standing on corners. One thing I learned about the streets, it's never too late for a come up. I was told before that I couldn't do it. I remember being told by my own peeps not to rap, and singing in my hood wasn't popular, but I got respect for it cause I was a beast. Facts. If you got a dream, you gotta stay committed, you can get it, but you gotta be a beast, you can't slack for a minute. Remember this, if you don't remember nothing else, you gotta be